I want to thank the members of the New York State Assembly for giving myself and other education leaders an opportunity to share our perspectives on Common Core and high-stakes testing. My name is Karen Lessler. I'm currently a secondary social studies teacher as well as a school board president beginning my 14th year. I have a doctorate degree in education in which I completed a 4-year dissertation on whether high-stakes testing improves student academic achievement. And I can say with confidence, supported by a substantial body of data, that high-stakes testing does not improve student academic achievement. My research did discover was that highly effective teachers, and I mean really highly effective teachers, and not those that are defined by these Heidi scores, increases academic achievement among students. I'll do my best to answer your questions in reference to the topics you posed in your letter. First, the Commissioner, along with the Board of Regents, put the cart before the horse. By testing first and then implementing the Common Core curriculum, they demonstrated a clear exertion to have schools fail. There is no methodology within the education research community that would validate this approach. Moreover, there has been over 25 years of research conducted by leading education researchers like Linda Darling Hammond and Diane Ravitch, who have shown high-stakes testing does not improve student achievement. What was enacted in New York State is a teach to the test system, which promotes the unintended consequences of a narrow curriculum, loss of developmentally appropriate instruction, teacher loss of control, and a greater financial burden to the school districts. Moreover, the Commissioner lacked the understanding as to how his policies would affect an educator's ability to reach their goals directly related to helping students succeed within the classroom. At no time did the SCD produce conditions for an understanding of the Common Core. My recommendation is for the SCD to refocus on the development of age-appropriate instruction and curriculum across all disciplines. Secondly, I recommend that the SCD create a plan that will support the implementation of professional development for all teachers in New York State. Provide them with the resource, give them the workshops that they need to incorporate Common Core and allow time to shift into these instructional practices. Secondly, to stop the test and punish system that has been enacted within APPR. The Danielson and the NYSEC rubric were meant as frameworks for teaching. It was not intended to assign scores and punish teachers. According to Danielson, and I quote, "The framework may be used for many purposes, but its full value is realized at the foundation for professional conversation among practitioners as they seek to enhance their skill in this complex task of teaching." The recommendation here is to roll back the 20% student growth and allow school districts to develop their own district-provided growth measure. Moreover, the SCD should refocus their entire agency by providing professional development and support to superintendents and administrators who can reevaluate teacher evaluations and student achievement. APPR is not the approach to solve that problem. Consider Finland. In an article, Learning from Finland, Patsy Salzberg highlights reasons of why Finland's educational system is successful. And it's rooted in a high regard and strong support of their teachers, and allowing local school districts are given great independence. If our own SCD continues to demoralize teachers and students through high-stakes testing, not applying, quote, high regard and strong support for educators and students as the Finns do, with tremendous academic results, I must say, will be left with the opposite of the SCD's objectives. Thirdly, removal of state testing. The pressure of high-stakes testing exerts tremendous stress on students and teachers. Elected officials are incorrect to think that high-stakes testing is a tool for school reform. The major mistake with policymaking is we inherently believe in top-down policy reform. This mistake continues to be the fundamental problem with public education. Education reforms have not been successful simply because education policies are enacted on the premise that either there's a silver bullet or test and punish. Both do not work. And we know this even going back to 1983 with regards to a nation at risk. All high-stakes testing does is create anxiety and stress for students and teachers. Teachers feel pressured to teach to the test. Teachers feel pressured to ignore other parts of the curriculum. And it also causes this standardized writing and reading, which creates very unnatural environments and what researchers Nichols and Berliner call compliance to the rubric. This is not the method to develop critical thinkers. The recommendation here is to reduce the testing. First, reduce the amount of time students are being tested. 540 minutes in combined ELA and math is not age appropriate. Allow teachers and administrators to create their own assessments. The SED should use school districts' data to improve their curriculum and their instructional support. No test and punish school districts. Let's consider Finland's approach. And their approach is students don't take standardized tests. Which leads me to my final comments about what Diane Ravitch calls the hoax of the privatization movement and the danger to America's public schools. How did we get this far without asking the difficult questions at the start of implementation of APPR, high-stakes testing, and the Common Core curriculum? How did we come to entrust Commissioner King, David Coleman, the architect of Common Core, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to decide what's best for our children? Where is the rationale that age-appropriate instruction is not important? How did the Board of Regents approve the Common Core when it was never piloted? How did we implement a narrow methodology of reading comprehension and believe that's the only thing we need? And how did we leave out educators and administrators, superintendents, and school board members during the implementation of all these policies? How can the state of New York entrust our children to what is emerging to be a political self-serving mood to privatize and dismantle public education? You know as well as I do that public education is the great equalizer. It's the door to opportunities for every single child in America. Will the private sector companies be the great equalizers, or will profit prevail over our children? I am very appreciative that the New York State Assembly is holding these hearings, and I hope you return to Albany better prepared to ask the difficult questions, because we're counting on you to be our voice, because no one else is. Robin Meehan said, and I leave you with this, we are not just teachers, we are managers of the world's greatest resource, and that's children. Like most teachers that you've heard, I truly believe I am more than just a teacher. I believe the work in the classroom is the heartbeat of America. I also believe that policymakers need to start believing this too, and realize that the SED should be the support staff for educators and school districts. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lessler. Before we go on, I just wanted to ask you a question, and I thought your questions were very appropriate. How do we get this far without asking the difficult questions at the start? Do you feel that if they had taken the time, as I said before, to listen to educators and delayed this for a year, it could have been done because the advice of the teachers would tell them how to do it without eliminating the talent of the teacher in what she can do, as the quote you gave, to manage those children? Do you think a year would have been okay?
I think it would have been more than a year, and it would have been a process, but you're absolutely right. You had to get people to buy into this process. They had to prepare for this process. I don't think anyone objects to high standards and certainly wanting to improve curriculum and instruction. But that is a process. There is no easy way out of that.
Okay, and one other thing, I understand that much of the materials that would become available, by the time they were made available, most school districts had run out of their budgets,
That's
right? So
exactly
they couldn't
right.
get them to assist the teachers, right?
That's exactly right.
So
And keep in mind that just providing the materials without the professional development and the training, there's got to be depth and breadth to educating. And we know that through research. When a teacher has depth and breadth of the content and the instruction, they are highly successful. That's a highly successful teacher. And the Department of Education is supposed to be the support staff
Yeah.
to make that happen. And they have not created. They are a test and punish center, and they're doing nothing more than that. So I agree with you.
So this was really too much too soon, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Karen, couple questions.
Sure.
Can you hear me here? Now, I have a degree in education. I went to SUNY Plattsburgh, all right? Can you hear me? Okay. I went to SUNY Plattsburgh. What I was taught about tests, when I gave tests to kids, what it did was give me an avenue to make sure that I was teaching it appropriately, okay? And if not, I had to go back and reteach it. So it's my understanding that these tests that the kids were given, like 70% failed. Is that correct?
On the pretest.
On the
And then,
pretest.
certainly on the standardized test, absolutely.
And you were not given the test, you couldn't review the test, you
That's
couldn't
exact-
look at the test questions, okay?
Right.
They're asking you to learn from, don't worry, the kids are going to take a test. And, you know, I'm looking at, if I have a kid that has always been an AP student, and next thing I know, he or she fails a test, I'm not going to be able to say to that student, don't worry, we expected you to fail this
Right.
test.
That's exactly
Okay,
right.
that's going to crush them as far as moving forward throughout their academic career. Now, my understanding is,
And I just want to add to your comment, because you're right. Assessment, it must be done minimally. It is a tool for teachers and the student, and that's all it should be. And it has to be appropriate, and it could be a snapshot. It doesn't have to be at the magnitude that the state is implementing. And what is it they're going to do with this tool?
and the other thing that I'm saying, and I want to see if this is right, it's sort of like they're writing lesson plans. So they're saying you're going to teach 5 minutes of this, you're going to teach 10 minutes of this, and you're going to teach, you know, they're going to get seat work for a little bit, then you're going to reinforce 5 minutes of this. So basically you have the teachers in the classroom, they're just reading scripts.
That's
Okay.
exactly right.
And there's no actual learning going on under this program. And when I went to school, and one of the things they stressed was children learn in different ways, okay? So, I mean, when you have tailored instruction like this, like some kids are textual, they have to touch, they have to see it. For instance, they have to write it down, okay? Some are visual, they have to see it. Other ones are, it's an auditory process that they have to hear it. So you'll have some people will learn by listening to tapes over and over again. That's how they get it. Other people will fill out index cards, all right? And you may have two of these where it's textual and visual, where you're going through the index cards. That's how you learn. Children learn in different ways. Doing it this way, they're knocking that out, from what I see. And the other thing that I used to do is, in a classroom, you teach to the center of the class. What I'm saying is, I look at the kids in the middle of the class, I'll teach the lesson, I'll give them seat work to reinforce what I just taught them. Then what will happen is, if I have kids that are a little advanced, I might give them a little tougher work, not to punish them, but to keep them engaged, okay? Then what it does is it gives me an opportunity to get to the kids that did not get what I was teaching and teach them in a different way.
That's right.
And every lesson that you teach builds upon the next lesson and the next lesson. And they're building blocks. And if you leave out that block, you're never going to get to where you want. Now, there's the Common Core, the way they're asking you to teach it, is that giving you an opportunity to teach that way?
The way it's scripted and the way it's being shoved, and I mean shoved down teachers' throats, is still lined up to this standardized testing. And the moment you standardize testing and have high-stakes testing, you take away teachers' creativity to instruct. Teachers will assess a classroom and move their lessons according to the students in that room, and that will change from year to year, and you take that away. To have teachers be given a script on what they should say and how students respond is ludicrous. It makes no sense. All this demonstrates to educators that the SED is not in the classroom. There is a multitude of things that go on in that classroom. Emotional issues with students, relationship building, and then instructional learning. Nobody objects to raising the bar and having high standards, but all of that is the work of the educator. And the SED's responsibility is to provide the tools that teachers need to create this environment and learning in the classroom. And high-stakes testing does not create a learning environment.
Right.
It
And
never
that-
did, and you've got 30 years of data to prove it out.
And now that we have inclusive classrooms where we take children with special needs and we put them into the classroom, those are the kids we're going to lose here.
Absolutely.
Because
You
you're
can
not
a
gonna have
child
time.
Come through a school class system. I think that's one of the most critical, that's an important point that you're bringing up, is the fact that you can have a youngster in a self-contained room most of the elementary years, and then you want to push them into a mainstream class for social reasons, also to push them a little further academically. Now you've got this youngster in a room with a teacher that is got to perform. All students have to be successful, and that burden is on that youngster not to develop a love of learning and working with a teacher in a particular content area. You have destroyed any chance of that being successful under this testing. The
So-
moment you pre-test that youngster, you already have disengaged that student.
So in my opinion, we're going to lose all of these kids.
I think you already lost students, and you heard that earlier testimony, and you're going to continue to disengage students in learning. And you're also going to lose highly effective teachers that don't want to teach like this, and they're going to leave this industry.
One last question. And I'm going to ask this of everyone, especially the teaching professionals. What they're giving you, is it developmentally appropriate?
No, not at all.
Okay, and you submitted here a math
I gave
problem.
you math problems. That's an 8th grade sheet, worksheet for 8th graders.
Yes, can you read this equation?
Oh, I don't have a copy of it,
Oh, here.
but you want me to read it out loud? It says, list all possible cases of whole numbers m and n for identity 1. More precisely, when m is greater than 0 and then n is greater than 0, we already know that 1 is correct. What are the other possible cases of m and n for which 1 is yet to be verified? I have a doctoral degree, and I don't even know what this is telling me. Okay? This is work, and I'll say this is work of mathematicians. So, but we're dealing with children, and that's the most critical thing. And you send a child home to do homework, and you give them 20 problems like this, and they are frustrated, and they're angry, and their parents are frustrated and angry. What happens to this? This goes into the garbage, and you disengage the child, and it can happen rapidly. It doesn't have to take years. It could happen in one session of learning, trying to learn math.
What happened to if Farmer Brown has 2 bushels of apples?
Right.
And he gives half
Thank
of his
you.
load to a friend, how many bushels does he have left?
That's exactly right.
Right?
That's exactly right. And that's, not to belabor this, but that's the whole point to this. You start a curriculum from the beginning and you build, especially with mathematics. That is a building process. So I understand where you want to go, but you don't enact it to 8th, 6th, and 5th graders and shove it down people's throat. It's a process, and we can get there if the process is that the SED is not the dictator. The SED is the support staff to teachers in that classroom.
Very good, thank you.
I
And you can keep your mask.
Thank you.
I just want to point out before we continue, we've been joined by our colleague Andrew Garbarino, another representative of part of Suffolk County in the Assembly, and I believe Assemblyman Lupinacci has a question.
Just a quick question and a follow-up. Assemblyman Graff asked a great question. What grade level is this? Now, just to reiterate, is there flexibility in choosing the material? And you pointed this out, and it's dealing with exponents, the problems that you use. Is there flexibility in choice of material?
Certainly the commissioner speaks to there's flexibility, but we, as teachers, we don't know what's on the test, so we're trying to cover material and speculate what will be. Everything is secretive. Everything changes rapidly, so we're trying to get material. And then you have people's careers on the line if that test, those students don't perform. So you are moving a lot of material forward because you are teaching to the test.
And, the sample that you give here, and it obviously lists Common Core on it for 8th grade, I mean, the material isn't that dense, but the way they illustrate it, the way they give the examples,
that's
and
right.
then they, lose the question right in the wording,
That's right.
there needs to be more of a build-up approach, I think.
That's right.
And, looking at this lesson isn't that complex, but the way they're presenting it, it's making terribly complex.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And you could certainly look at ELA, and the same approach is that children are reading material that we're not teaching social studies anymore because we're concentrating on ELA. Meanwhile, in order to read the material, they've got to have this background and this knowledge.
I mean, I've been a math tutor for over 20 years, and I teach college-level statistics. And even I had to reread exercise 1, and it's not because I don't have the ability to do it, it's just that they're going to lose the 8th grader in the wording of it.
That's
so.
right. That's exactly right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.